What up, homies? We got another series of games on our hands here. I think this one might end up being a two-parter, but we'll see how far we get through the first two. It's Shopkeeper Dog versus Krankendau. It's going to be some TVZ, and it looks like, are all of these on Catalyst? Indeed, they are. Catalyst, a new map. I think this one is by Biddyby in the style of Impetus. So, we have Krankendau, apparently 0.5, because, he's coming back into the fold. He is the maroon Zerg in the bottom left. And Shopkeeper Dog in the top right is our green Terran, who's anything but green. He's a steeled veteran of these parts. You see, he's Class 2. In fact, he recently increased his rank a little bit within Class 2, so let's just say he's looking hot. He took a game off of the champion of Acropolis 2, AUD64, in the Battlement stage of that same tournament. Shout out to him. He actually won the first game of the whole group. And, that's it. Stop the count, No need to look into what happened after that. He plays a very greedy, I would say, well, greedy might not be the right word for it. I think it's greedy, but I think he thinks it's optimized, Shopkeeper Dog is like a nice optimizer type of Terran, where he likes to drop his structures at the right time. He has spreadsheets, he knows his Excel foo, like that kind of stuff. Google Sheets is his weapon of choice, that kind of thing. And he does have over here, Krankendau, a player who used to be, I would say, he was probably, one of our stronger Zergs. I don't think he ever ascended to the point where he was the strongest Zerg, because I think that still went over to Hamster, and maybe the Shambler, but I think Shambler, when Krankendau's era was upon him, I think Shambler was actually Protoss at that time, so I don't know if you would still run him in the count there. Nowadays, you're talking about a much more sort of, there's a lot of other Zerg players that are mainstay Zergs. It's weird because Hit 'em Up lingers in my psyche whenever I talk about top players in Cosmonarchy. Leviathan, his other alter ego, his other ID. And Hit 'em Up was a player, or is a player, that he plays all the different races, right? So it's hard for me to say that he's not the strongest at any given race. When I talk about the best Terrans, I'm thinking of obviously most recently AUD64, and I'm thinking about, we've got Top Ramen, and then Hit 'em Up is also a really good Terran, and he did play exclusively Terran when he was up against actually, the Top Ramen era, if you want to call it that, where he was second place at Tyrant's Tale. Hit 'em Up won that tournament as mainstay, just Terran, just playing Terran. And so he switched over to Random now, and so I don't really immediately think of him as the best Terran player, or the best Zerg player, the best Protoss player, even though he probably is at least the best Protoss player. Protoss is probably the strongest race. But that being said, he's not a bad Terran. He's very, very good. And I would say his Zerg, even though it might be arguably his weakest on paper, it's still pretty deadly as well. So all that to say, I think the best active Zerg exclusive players right now would probably be Hamster. I guess, Hamster is definitely the one that stands out to me the most. We did have Art of Turtle place fairly high in Acropolis Throne Room. He got into Acropolis Throne Room. He exited 7th to 8th. We had Shambler's been playing Terran, so he's not really in the running. And then you think about Kennelly, Gerald Storm. There's somebody else who I'm missing the name of off the dome. Arbuz Budesh switched to Zerg recently, so he's also pretty good there. We got Luai down there in the same. So where does Krankendau kind of sit in our sort of, what would you say? Not domain, but our pantheon of Zerg players. Where does he sit? Well, Shopkeeper Dog is going to throw the Matadors at him and see what happens there. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. We'll see what he can do with those bad boys. Because I think they did get, maybe the Matador didn't get any changes. But I'm strongly considering giving them plus 50 health or something absurd just to see what happens. But they already do a lot of damage, so I might have to cut their damage a bit when I do that. We'll see. The Matadors are going to be backing up the Vultures, it looks like, and the Vultures have laid quite a few mines. Dog might decide to wait for Krankendau to move out, and he's doing so. He's playing Minesweeper with a couple of Zeths. This is where the Vultures would normally be kind of posturing aggressively to stop the Zeths from seeing too much, right? You don't want to let them clear the mines for free. Krankendau being forced into sort of the back area, he's going to go for an Ovaleth to clear those mines himself. He sees the Vulture count, knows that there's more mines laid. He's got his Zorka's Shroud coming a little bit under halfway done, and the Ministry on location. This is actually, I have very rarely see Dog go for 2 Folk openers, at least in the matches I've been casting. So he's experimenting with what to me seems like a new style for him. Of course, in true Pronago fashion, I could just be talking out the wazoo here as some Cyclops are coming out. Starpad as well for perhaps a Cyclops drop to pair with this. Dog showing a couple extra layers. And the Ovoleth will see the ocean of mines that have been laid. And as soon as that gets shown here by Krankendau, you can see Dog definitely thinking about maybe taking a step forward. You want to let the Zerg clear the mines and then see if you can get a good engagement. I actually think that the Matadors, with their extra armor, could have absolutely swung that kind of engagement. We'll see what happens here. Dog wants to see what he can do. Oh, he ends up getting a detonation off the back, and now he's going to go ahead and deploy another detonation coming in off the side. This is going to be a total wipe in favor of Dog's military. He even clears the Ovoleth, which was, I think, quite artfully by Krankendau, trying to fly over the army to use the Cyclops splash damage against him. And he's made enough quads that I think he can hold, especially if he stays on his ramp. But even without that, it might be just fine. Kind of jockeying for position now. See what else we can end up doing here, as Krankendau was thinking about taking a natural. Now has to invest into 4 Zoryus and 6 pairs of Zeths. A 3rd ministry on the way. Dog is definitely not scaling his military production out and has no sustain, no healing. So this army is kind of like, it's going to have a shelf life. And that expiration date seems to be approaching quite quickly. Especially with the Zoryus out, it's going to be hard for you to get rid of that ensnare, you know? It's nearly a guaranteed thing, especially if you're not able to hold them at an arm's length with like some kind of front line that you don't mind getting ensnared to begin with, because they're just there to tank. Now, the armor rend from the Matadors might be helping out here a little bit. There go most of the Zoryus. There's one more in the back line there. And all of the ensnare being detonated upon the tanks means that it's a little bit, you know, harder for the damage of the force to actually get cleaned up here. So very nice there. Very nice. The Matadors staying quite heavily alive. Another wipe in favor of Dog. Now, the Gorger cores are kind of like a cheeky choice here because, again, you're going to be on top of your own military. And there goes the Cyclops kind of detonating themselves there a little bit. One of the Vultures steals a lot of the attention there. And yeah, it looks like Krankendau is forced to Jeej, as we're calling it now, with Shopkeeper Dog taking the first round. And he had a follow-up to that. He had a transition to that. I do think that that was a tough situation for Crank to come away from and say, like, oh yeah, I definitely know how to do something better than that in the future. Maybe instead of the Zorkas, you go Hydras in that kind of situation so you can attack from further afar. A lot of those units that Dog was making compete for each other with weapon ranges. And that might have been something you could abuse with the sort of stutter-stepping movement. Like, the army wants to move into you. And so maybe having Hydras there with the Quaz frontline would have helped out. That's just sort of me spitballing, though. I'm sure Crank has his own set of ideas. Lake is obviously would have shut it down because there was no detection. We'll come back to that as we get into game number 2. We go straight back in with Krankendau in the top right as our Maroon Zerg once more. And Shopkeeper Dog in the bottom left. You know, I don't know what this color is. I've seen a lot of colors. And I feel like this one is going to be a really silly one to guess. It almost kind of reminds me of Burnt Umber, but I feel like Burnt Umber should be darker, no? Maybe this is like Mahogany, but it seems like a little bit too bright for Mahogany. Yeah, I'm honestly stuck. I'm honestly stuck with this one. I'll say Mahogany. But it was Chestnut. I haven't seen Chestnut in years, in ages, boys. Chestnut was the color of one of the Zergs in one of the very original Hydra missions, back when this was called Project Hydra instead of Cosmonarchy, back when we were still using the old lore instead of making our own. Chestnut was like a classic color for the Gorn Cerebrit. So that's what I associate Chestnut with. It's really cool to see that color resurge. And as a result, Shopkeeper Dog is obviously a Zerg main now. Had to take one of my sponsored sips. By the way, I can't pan to a sponsored logo, even though this map was made by BiddyB, because he has not placed any of his own company's logos in a map that he made. Unbelievable. Shopkeeper Dog looks to be interested in taking a fast expansion. He has gone for a stockade, so this one could end up being a bit of a quicker demise for him. Krankendau going for that pool into Larvosk. We're definitely going to see a different style here because we are going to see the Stockade into Ministry. He goes for the Stockade, he goes for the Maverick, and then he makes the Ministry. So the Maverick is here to kill the Worker so that you don't end up showing your opponent that, hey, I've taken this base or whatever, right? So needs 2 more hits on that poor Droleth, and he will go ahead and re-stim and execute it. I don't know if he needed to do that second stim, but that's not that big of a deal. He ends up taking care of it. He wanted to also make sure that he didn't, like, burrow, so he was constantly looking at the worker and just sort of macroing off of hotkeys in the meanwhile, I think. Stockade number 2 on the way. Mason going to go ahead and get pinched. He sees the second K-Grunt. I mean, you know, whatever, that's fine. He obviously knew that was coming, so. Third Stockade. Okay, interesting. So we are going to see the Maverick return. He sees the early military units and knows, okay, I can't just, like, walk across with my Maverick and do any damage, so, you know, my opponent isn't doing Turbo Greed. It's very... I am really excited to see, like, where some of these styles and some of these opening matchups... Like, a meta needs to develop in the first place, right? And so it's really interesting, like, the flow chart that you might end up seeing is going to look really different in this than in StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2, where the build orders can open up less, I guess you could say, in a less varied way, right? You need to learn so many more things about Tier 1 to understand how the openers could end up affecting. Like, Crank going for early Zorkis into an Ovalith, that's different than what you know, he did last game, where he tried to go for the expansion and then eventually, like, kind of got backed into it. This time he's doing it by choice, and, like, he's doing it maybe a bit earlier. And now we got the Star Pad coming after the Ministry, after the Stockade. Like, it's very different. A lot of permutations going on here, and that's my kind of shit. So if you agree, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We get casts all the time, every day, until I miss a day. But until then, every day. And just wanted to let you guys know that that's happening. Pump these numbers. Let's get this game into the mainstream. As whatever is mainstream for RTS, which I guess is like Artosis or Grubby or Euthermal or somebody like that, you know? And if you have any personal connections with those YouTuber personalities, make sure to let them know about Cosmonarchy. It's epic. Send them this clip of me casting it as an Ovalith avoids some Mavericks. Now, we are going to see some Harakans come out as the sort of secondary unit, and I love to see Cyprians here. They are going to be able to penetrate pretty much all of the basic stuff. This Ovalith doesn't end up getting caught. Ministry slowly adding a little bit of workers here, and Krankendau is catching up in the worker count. He will actually supersede his opponent. Shopkeeper Dog has cut workers. I've never seen Shopkeeper Dog do that. Now he's going to go ahead and resume worker production, and he will snipe the Ovalith before it can end up making anywhere close enough to scout the Ant Seal, scout the Star Pad. And the Ant Seal is going to be very important because we do have Lakis out to hold the bio. Krankendau taking a very slow expo, and now the bio is going to go ahead and move out. This will hit very hard, especially given the way the Krankendau's position as Lake is not at the choke, but like further back. Does he reconsider that move? It looks like he wants to leapfrog forward a little bit, and he is going to need to go ahead and put down his Circuit. So that's very important. He's got a third Lake is there. Ant Seal to scout forward here, I think it should realize, like, oh, okay, this is where my opponent's, you know, bulk of my opponent's forces is. I do like the split so far. He can dive in at some point if he wants to. This is going to turn into a Circuit real fast, it feels like. He's thinking about it. Actually, he's only going to do it reactively? No, there we go. Now it's coming in. The Ant Seal comes in a little bit too late to scout that. A third Lake fourth Lake has joined the fight. That's going to cancel this attack immediately. We don't have a Trojan coming, so no elevator option. Ant Seal would love to just float over the cliff and deposit your units there. Fulcrum as the transition point. Maybe he wants to use Phalanxes here? I'm wondering what he wants to use for that. But either way, he is making the Trojan now. Already anti-drop defense coming out here. Crank knows what's up. He's been here before. So this kind of swings into a more normalized position. No player is really ahead. Maybe if Dog hadn't lost as many Mavericks in that early stages of the game like that just now, he might be slightly ahead because he is like more of a safe... you could call this like a very safe contain that he would have had going on there, whereas now it's a lot more brittle. He's going to go for the 8 Maverick drop with the Trojan. Send it on its way. It's not going to get too much done. We do have the 1 Lakis here as well. I guess without the Lakis, I would actually say you could maybe snipe down the back Circuit. Maybe you could still end up hitting the Zorka's Shroud from here. Some Gorgs are coming out. Interesting choice here for Krankendau. He was always a believer. Now Gorgs do have more HP on this patch, so it's a little bit different than what they were before, but still. Let's see. They didn't do him too well before. The Maverick is going to unload in the range of the Lakis spikes and also in the range of one of those Circuits, so it's going to end up getting bopped here. Not ideal. He's going to scoop him out and get out of there. makes a lot of sense. He also tries at the front, but the Lakers are still burrowed there. He sees the Gorgs. Will he make any Watchdogs? Now he's adding some Fulcrums for the Phalanx, so that was a good prediction by me, apparently. A second Trojan, he will be trying to do his trademark drops, I guess. It's not his trademark drops, it's somebody's. Lake is going to go ahead and burrow here. Not going to end up getting any of them sniped. Now, as this leaves, 4 Mavericks are earmarked for the natural, but there's already a Circuit over there. It still might make Krankendau, pause his movements a little bit there. I would like to unload here, but that's unbuildable. There we go. Going to go ahead and stim and maybe hold pause. No, not quite. And now, of course, the Phalanx, the Watchdogs, he's guarding against the Gorgakor bust. We have no Madrigals here for Splash, so the Gorgakors are definitely going to be pretty impactful. Now, this base is going to have to get canceled, which is so heartbreaking for Dog. He wanted to just be able to keep that base running. Now we've got double expansion out of Krankendau as he takes 2. He knows that he has got the tempo, and that now it's him who's going to be doing the containing. He's got a lot of money in the bank, admittedly. Not a whole lot when it comes to the... He doesn't have a crazy amount of production, so he can't really spend this money down too easily. That was a very dangerous move to stack up the workers at that point. At the same time, he's actually committed some of his forces, I think accidentally. Ends up working out okay for him as he clears a couple of the Phalanxes. 3 Gorgs left, a couple Lakas left. And now, tier 2 on the way here for Shopkeeper Dog. A Ministry going to be made on the high ground. 1 Hurakan remains in that Trojan. Nothing remains in that Trojan, so... Still, that was a good drop from Dog to kind of distract Krankendau, and he's got so much money. He's immediately adding 2 more hatches so that he can help spend his mineral bank down a little bit. He's not actually making any units out of those. I'm surprised he's reserving his cash. He could at least flood the map with Zets or something. So that's a bit puzzling. Or maybe pre-make Droleth for some of these bases. That could be another option. Decent amount of larvae still here. Looks like Droleth are the option on the table. He's very, very close to affording tier 2. And now he's just going to go ahead and fall back to the middle of the map. Madrigals are out, so that's going to reduce the efficacy of those very important Gorgakors. I guess they've been very important. They've definitely stopped the move out from happening. Watchdogs help out quite a bit there. Atlas nearly complete here for our Terran player. And Krankendau, as he switches into a more aggressive Lakes-oriented style, spends down a lot of his gas. We are going to see the Ovalith come out here just to scout. It's not going to end up doing too much there. It sees the Ministry coming down. He might have just barely caught a glimpse of the Atlas. So we'll see about that. Hatches finishing up in the main base for Crank. Those macro hatches going to help him out spending his money down, which he does need help with, very clearly. 7 Gorgs on the way. He's not going to be moving to tier 2 anytime soon, although he is saturated on the gas, so there is that at least. And he's already setting up his anti-drop defense with the Lakes and the Kagrant at the 4th base. 3rd now floating over for Shopkeeper Dog, so he'll try to stabilize. Once your Zerg opponent has 1 base up on you, it becomes a lot harder to handle what they can throw at you. And now a Hydrith Den coming, so the options are going to be more unlimited. Mantle's coming out online. Interesting choice here for Shopkeeper Dog. Maybe wants those Ramses. Maybe wants the Cataphracts. I don't begrudge him that. He's going to go ahead and stim. He's going to pull back from the Lakes, and the Madrigal's going to come out to salvo down some of those Gorgakors. You can see 2 of them very, very bruised left for standing. Good Lakes snipe there to get rid of one of the Madrigals. You can see Krankendau back to his usual antics. I missed Krankendau, dude. He would love to spam Lakes all the time. That was his move. That was his favorite move. Was going for the Lakes route. Let's see what he can make happen over here. Trojan with 1 Hurakan in it. It doesn't end up unloading. Yeah, combined with the Phalanxes, I feel like Dog has a chance to continuously move through here. But if he loses the Madrigals, the Gorgs overwhelm. The Gorgs might overwhelm anyway. Now here come the Lakes to try to force the issue. As the Gorgs come in from the top rope, the Madrigals are splashing so many of them down, but is it going to be enough? They were kind of split up, and now the Gorgs are getting on top of everything else. That is going to be it for the Madrigals. They are going to clear a lot of the Gorgs meanwhile. Krankendau being a little bit, you could say, irresponsible with those, but yeah, that is going to keep most of the Terran army in the dustbin, relegate it to history. And Shopkeeper Dog is going to go ahead and try to remax with tier 2 units and his bio force, of course. Tier 2 now on the way for Krankendau. It feels like it's a little bit, shorter and later than we would like, but there's 17 Zoryus to spend his minerals. He finally got rid of those pesky minerals. And he's got his 8 wounded Gorgakors, veteran warriors. There's not really any splash air here. Okay, now some madrigals are coming out. I was going to say, a bit scary to be in that position. A captaincy on the way. Mantles were built at different locations, which is a bit confusing. Now adding Durandals as well. In fact, did they add anything other than Durandals? No, it's going to be 6 Durandals here out for Shopkeeper Dog. They're pretty beefy, pretty tanky, and they do rend armor, so that's helpful as well. They're going to take a lot of Lakis spines to clear out. This one Hurakan Trojan, Ahmed's just watching from the sky, and then occasionally bugs poke at him. Now here comes this oddly formatted attack. Yeah, we do have the 8 Gorgs sort of moving around. The 4th base being consolidated here for now as another macro hatch gets down. Lots of static defense being erected at that position, and we've got plenty here at the 3rd base as well. Krankendau now has tier 2. What is he going to do with it? Apostles being added to the mix. Shopkeeper Doug going to go ahead and try to turn the dead against each other. I believe this... Oh, man, when was this updated? This was updated after I casted the FFA, which was for New Year's Eve. Or maybe it was New Year's... Yeah, it was New Year's Eve. So I think this is before the Reclamation changes kicked in. So we do have some changes to Reclamation. I don't believe that they are active on this game. I'll be able to tell you based on how fast the Apostle attacks. So let's take a look. Oh no, the Reclamation changes are in. Okay, there you go. So this is going to be weaker Reclamation than before. We're going to see if that makes an impact, if Dog is still able to actively use those units. And now, a 5th base coming online here, a 6th base coming online here for Krankendau. He's trying to take extra territory, and he's guarding against a 4th base being put down, but Dog is doing it in the bottom right anyway. Bactilisk's on the way. Now we've got the Calcure Light coming. You know, people tell me, Pronago, you can turn your Ski-Back Scab, your Hydra into a Ski-Back Scab, even when you have tier 2. Tier 2 is on the way, and that's when he chose to turn it into a Ski-Back. But I still think you should reserve the right to do that, because it's faster, it's cheaper. Maybe you don't need the other units. Maybe you just desperately need Bactils, or more rarely Skiths. I say the player can make that choice if they want. Starport on the way for Shopkeeper Dog. He needs his Azazels, he needs his Anseals, and we have 11 Lyrilisks on the way as well. So absolutely going to be seeing some bigger, beefier armies, tier 2 armies clashing against each other. That's the kind of thing we like to see when it comes to Cosmonarchy. That's why we all, that's the price of admission that we paid, even though the game is obviously free. That's a big reason why everybody's so invested in it. Look at all these cool units. Let's see them fight each other. Krankendau has a lot of Lakis. He has so many Lakis, and this is almost a 360-degree surround right now for Shopkeeper Dog's army, but the Apostles are still, while they're surrounded, they're going to try to keep things going. In the meanwhile, the Madrigals getting their best foot forward against those Gorgakors, and you know what? The Durandals are staying alive despite all the ensnare, despite all the damage. The Lake is going to burrow again. The Shamans have been so instrumental at keeping things alive, but with the Apostles down, it does feel like that force is going to start to crumble. The Madrigals need to deploy to start shooting, but I feel like it's too late. They've got no health left. Barely getting a couple of salvos out. The Phalanx going to deploy, but it's too late for it to matter too much. It wastes a shot on Azorius, and it will be overwhelmed. You might have had a couple of Apostles and whatever, but now it's back down to the drawing board. This isn't too many Zerg to deal with, to be honest. You could conceptually, you could fight this, but the Lake is wisely guarding against the reinforcements coming out here, and now the Mason pull. No, they're automatically pathing through all of the bases, including the Lake is. Oh, this is horrifying. Oh, somebody tell Neblime not to watch this part. Look at all the dead workers. Oh my god. It's a disaster. There's no further detection. He made the commandment too late. Oh my god. Reinforcements coming in from Krankendau. You needed to stuff this without losing the 3rd. That was the only way Shopkeeper Dog could have maybe swung it. Definitely was not going to happen. And you know what? The Reclaimers didn't really seem like they did too much to turn the tide, but Krankendau had such an insane surround for a position. It was only due to the Durandals, the Shamans, etc. that Shopkeeper Dog held on for as long as he did. That was not going to be enough, though. Krankendau now capping 2 of his gas. He's going to go for the Tethvith Swamp. Maybe he wants to add those Tethzoricors. They're a lot more durable now. Get onto the front line and get some good lifesteal out of them. Cleave damage as well, though it's less relevant versus Terran. The Vithrilisks are not bad versus Anseal stacks because they spread the debuff to everything else. Ahmed has finally come out of his hiding hole, his worker, and he's disrupted mining in the top left. You can't tell me Ahmed didn't do his job in this game. You can't tell me that. He's even going to run fearlessly into the maw of Lyrilisks. The real Ahmed would have won that fight, but you know how it is. All right, well, with very minimal forces, Shopkeeper Dog is going to be posturing aggressively. I think he's recognized that with the Apostles, he can maybe try to steal enough Zerg units to get something going here. Get like a chain reaction where he just has massive cost efficiency. But the writing is a bit on the wall here, so he knows he needs to do something. He's stolen 1 Hydra so far. Stonks. Stonks rising for Shopkeeper Dog. Stockkeeper Dog. Krankendau giving him a lot of breadth right now. A lot of breathing room. Dude, I thought that said 53 Bactylisks, but 23 is equally terrifying, to be honest. So many units coming online here for Krankendau. His economy is booming. He's adding a 7th base. And it's in territory that shouldn't be Dog's control, too, which is even more scary. Trying to posture around the sort of negative space created over in this area. It's a bold move. And the Seraph comes in to irradiate. Yeah. Yeah, fuck them workers. I hate to tell you this, Dog. But you're going to need to do that about 30 more times before you're even in workers. All right, well, once again, Krankendau has a very, very good position here with reinforcements that can come in through the north, if they're even necessary. The Irradiate goes down, but the Seraph is soon to fall, and that will be it. Krankendau closing the door on this game. Shopkeeper Dog, he got one on the board. Krankendau tied up the set of matches that has been sent to me. I have no idea how many matches were actually played. I think they said best of 17, but that could have been tongue-in-cheek. But, you know, Krankendau is a grinder, so maybe that's not true. Maybe it was straight up facts, as the kids say. A fax machine. That's Krankendau. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with part 2 of this at some point soon. I don't know if it'll be right back to back. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. GG, boys.